Well, hi guys. Along the many twisted paths that I've taken through electricity over the years, a while back I got turned on to Tesla coils, and it comes kind of standard. Years back I was a big follower of Thomas Edison and was sure that he was probably the closest thing to a hero that I allow. And then as I got older and I got more knowledgeable, I learned a lot about Nikola Tesla, who was a pretty bright feller back about the turn of the century and managed to do a lot of the things. There was a whole lot going on at the turn of the century. This is the last century for those of you that are youngsters. But 1900 was any number of people making any number of discoveries. And as is the case when people are involved in a lot of research and there's stuff happening at a given time, there's a lot of people taking claims for it. Failure is an orphan, but success has a lot of fathers. And so in the times when these people were all exploring electricity and getting going on it, there was many people that came up with things. Nikola Tesla, surprisingly enough, lit the World's Fair with fluorescent lamps, not with incandescent lamps like Edison was promoting generally. But this was way back in, what year was the World Fair that year? Anyway, around the turn of the century. He did a lot of amazing things. Eventually, a court case in the 1930s awarded him with the patent for inventing radio as opposed to Marconi. And so, again, it's a real hotbed at that time. But one of the things that Nikola Tesla did do that is obvious to all of us, and is the only reason that we are sitting here under lights, is him and Westinghouse got together on basically the distribution system that we use across the country still today. And that is, of course, the AC distribution system. He and Edison had quite a fight over that. And long and short of it is, in fact, that at that time, Tesla was right. You couldn't distribute DC easily. Nowadays, we use DC to distribute power, high voltage, across some of the lines. They're actually converted to DC and then back to AC. But we didn't have those semiconductors or the devices that we used to do it back then. And so AC was the only available one. Edison fought Tesla all the way, to the point of electrocuting animals with AC, just to show the public that this AC stuff was real dangerous and that, boy, you didn't want to have it running around loose. So I'm not going to be real deep on the theory of all this, because basically what I'm doing here tonight is pretty simple and straightforward. We're just playing with voltage above the levels that most hams play with it. Tesla was really good at resonance. The fella understood resonance better than anybody I think I've ever met, and I only wish I had that understanding of it. He did everything with resonance, from electrical things to mechanical things. And in fact, those two fellers that are doing, what's the name of their show? That check all the things. Anyway, they took some of his mechanical resonance tricks and went out to the Carquinez Straits, to the old Carquinez Bridge, and they set up a linear actuator on the thing, and they actually managed to find a resonance point on the bridge that they could feel the bridge shake on the other end from simply the movement of a 1-foot-long linear actuator at the other end.
Mythbusters.
Mythbusters, yeah, Adam Savage and the other feller. Anyway, they're fun. I do events. This stuff is not only fun for me to play with, but I go to educational events. There's Maker Faire, which is coming up on May 18th, I believe, the same weekend as the ham swap here in town, so I have to miss that. But if you want to do a 2-day thing, you can go to the ham swap one day and then come down to the Maker Faire the other day. It's a science fair in steroids. It's held at the San Mateo Expo Center. And I'm only one of many people there. There's another Tesla coil band that's there that has 2 large Tesla coils that they play music through. The guy plays a keyboard through one of them and guitar through the other. And then they have a robotic drummer. And so these guys perform. I'm in the same building as they are, which is called the Dark Building, because they keep it pretty dark so that all these things can be seen. Upcoming events, let's see what else. Oh, there's a few other parties and strange events I perform at. Not only the 4th of July locally for my neighborhood, but I occasionally take this stuff out to Burning Man, for those of you that have heard of that. And there's a local party in Rancho Cordova that is kind of a burner party I'll be performing at on April 20th. Anyway, with no further ado, I have some things here. We had this turned on earlier, and this is your lowest voltage device that I have here tonight. a mere 15,000 volts at 30 milliamps. This is a very simple construction. Most of you folks probably have maybe constructed one of these. This is basically a neon sign transformer, which are getting harder and harder to get without GFIs, and a couple of electrodes. It starts out down here at the bottom where it's close enough together to actually arc. If we tried to start it out at the top, it wouldn't start because that's a little bit further than 15,000 volts will travel on its own. It starts out at the bottom where it can form, and then by the heat of the arc, it rises until such time as it goes off the top. Straightforward and simple. The 15,000 volts is only at 30 milliamps, but I was obligated one day just for the hell of it to stick my finger in there and see what it felt like, and it felt like 15,000. The little shocks, the 120 ones, I don't worry too much about anymore, although you never want to take an unlimited amount of current through your body. But these are, this one's dangerous. The next item over there, the Van de Graaff generator, basically a glorified conveyor belt for electrons, is very high voltage. It's probably, a couple 100,000. It varies greatly according to the moisture in the air and according to the charge time and the accumulation. If I'm standing there next to it and I'm touching it, as I will as a matter of fact here, I can accumulate quite a good charge on my body. Let's see, is that number 3 or 4? There we go, okay.
You want the lights down, John?
This one isn't too, you're not going to see a lot with this one anyway, with the exception of my hair. So when we go to the Tesla coil, we'll go for some light. But this one here, as I stand up and come up to voltage, first of all, as I get close to it, you can hear it but not see it. Now I'm taking a pretty sizable shock by most people's standards. You can probably see my fingers twitch a little bit. But I've gotten kind of used to it. It's a very safe shock. That's why I do this, so that people will have an opportunity to experience a safe shock, not only for the fun of it, but also to realize that most shocks, the real danger is from what you do when you feel it, not the shock itself. Obviously, if you attach yourself to something electrical and clutch, you're going to have a problem. But most shocks are more dangerous from what you might feel. Now, I don't know if my hair is up for it tonight. I might have to call upon my able-bodied assistant here. We have a guy with special hair that's designed just for this occasion. And if he would join me up here, I'll put him up here and let you guys see. And then I will be willing to take a shock for the benefit of those that want to come up and feel what this feels like. It's not scary, as Mike will tell you. It's actually kind of fun. You don't want to get hit in the head if you don't have to, although it won't hurt you, it'll hurt you. So, now we'll see how sweaty he got. If he got real sweaty today, his hair won't fly away like it does. There you go. Now, of course, once he touches that, then the shocking stops, and his body begins to assume the same voltage as that, which is perhaps a 250,000 volts or so. It's a relatively heavy amount of voltage, but very little current, and also very little time. It discharges very rapidly. If you guys happen to be fans of eBay, if you go on eBay and search under Tesla coils, as I did this morning when I was sitting on the john with my iPad, I saw his picture there. But it was the guy that built these Van de Graaff generators for me, whose name happens to be Graaff. He's a physics teacher down in Manteca and does excellent work. I've worked with him on these things for probably 10 years now. And we're going to be taking a 1,000,000-volt one out to Maker Faire this year that will have a 30-inch accumulator at the top and an actual chain-driven belt. A pretty strong device. So, and normally we have 3 or 4 of these things operational, and we just reach out and touch something. And I feel what I call it is the exit wound. Not only do I get shocked on my hand, but also through my feet. And of course, Mike gets the same shock. Most people say to me, "Oh, you don't feel that, you're up on that thing." I say, "No, you're on ground. When I give you a shock, I feel it." Now, if you want to do something really nasty to a guy that's standing up there, you can come up and get close to his pants or something. But I won't do that to him. He has to work with me later, and he may do it to me. So, good shock. Now, with him up there, it's way more than that because he is a capacitor. He is accumulating the charge. And so he has more current than just a little ball does. So, please, if any of you would like to try this, feel free. Either at break, you can come up, or in the meantime, if you want to come up, come on up and we'll let you try it now.
Everybody, free shots.
Normally we have a snowball around here, people seeking shots. But it's nothing that will cause you to fall on the floor and twitch.
I have a lot of fun at the Maker Fair. Probably over the weekend, probably can shock like 30,000, 40,000 people. And there always seems to be the couple, you know, the girlfriend and the guy. And the guy's like the killer jock guy. Come on, honey, do it. Come on, honey, do it. And I can, by the surface, present to somebody.
I'm getting shocked.
How big of a shock that they get. So if I present like the back of my hand, a little wide, flat surface, I can get a pretty small shock. So the woman will finally get talked into it, and I can give her a small shock. And then of course Jock Boy is like, oh, I don't know. It's like, come on, she did it. And so I nail him with my fingertip.
Now, Carol just learned something interesting. She reached up to her tripod here and discovered that she too is a capacitor.
It's got a shock.
And most things that are in the immediate vicinity, we're spraying out just a huge amount of electrons in this whole area. Now, those of you that have radios or perhaps cell phones on you may wonder why I've got my radio in my pocket. I don't stick my antenna out and take a hit on the antenna. The odds of me actually getting anything in here is going, I've been doing this for years, and I have yet to destroy a cell phone or a radio, and I carry them on me pretty much all the time. If you have a pacemaker, I've never had any trouble with pacemakers from people, but you may not want to get close. The distance of a couple table lengths would probably be safe.
If you don't want to get shocked, you can just get near me, and I can just kind of wave my arm over, and you can probably feel that, right? Can you feel it? If you just get close to me, you can just sort of feel the field around me. You don't actually get shocked until you get closer.
So at any rate, as you can see from Mike, he's pretty high voltage at the moment. This is a dude that has absorbed a lot of voltage and his hair is showing it.
Like see
Watch my hair when he reaches toward me.
and you can see how my hair goes down.
And worse yet, if he reaches far enough toward me, he'll hit me because, give me a back. And that goes out my feet. I can feel it because
you see how my hair
tubes are insulators, but not at this voltage. Not even close to being an insulator at this voltage. So, unless you think that something's going to help you at this kind of voltage, if you're ever working on flytrons or any sort of real high voltage, just remember, distance is your best friend. And even distance, as Carol found out a minute ago. So if you grab something fast, then you're grounded and then you don't have that problem anymore. Anybody else want to come up now? We'll run this again during intermission. Sure. Your hair won't stand up as you approach. First of all, we can do it the easy way or the hard way. Okay, the easy way is we'll get you standing up on, and your hair is curly, so odds are it's not going to stand up a great deal. Usually it takes a thin hair, yeah. First of all, would you like to impress these people that the shock isn't going to harm you by taking a shock? Go ahead and stand over here and reach out to Mike. Just hold the back of your hand out.
Back of your hand, rotate your hand.
Like that. And Mike's going to reach out and shock you. Go ahead and stand up on your arm. Wow. Right to the right. Good. Yeah, exactly. Short it down now. And I do that. As I get closer to Mike, the hair on his arm stands up.
You can just feel the field around. Feel the field?
And you can even see his hair standing up as he feels the field.
And I can feel the same feel while I'm doing it.
Now, if Mike gets too much of a charge on him, he may give him a hit to the head, which isn't harmful, but is more jarring than the hits to the hand that we're all.
I wasn't expecting that. So you can feel it? Yeah, I'm saying about a foot and a half away from your head, so I don't charge you in the head. But you can feel it.
We're looking over in your hair slightly. If you'd like to try standing up on that, there's a edge break that he's standing on. And he can get down and we can get you up there and you can give it a try.
On hot foot? Let me hot now.
Okay, let me turn this off for a minute so we don't accidentally shock you getting up there. And discharge. Okay, now this is a very narrow egg crate. So put one foot up there and feel it out. And let me kind of steady you. You want to be as close to the center as you can get.
Free shocks. Come on, people, let's go.
Now, so that you know where you are.
We have thousands of kids lined up around me that are all pushing and shoving each other.
Fiberglass. Sort out. That'll give you some kind of balance.
Is that what happened? Yeah, that's it.
Now, we'll do it the easy way. We'll bring it up while you're up there, and that way you won't take shocks on the way. Okay, we're coming up. Now, you can feel the charge accumulate on your body. And your hair is beginning to stand out. And now I'm going to reach in by your other hand, and I'm going to shock you and me both. And I won't reach in by your pants or anything else because that's nasty. But anyway, coming in for another shock. And if anybody else would like to join us up here in this insanity, come on up. He lives, and he isn't even weird like I am. This is a lot bigger than this is a pretty large one. It's got about a 5-inch belt, and it's about 3 feet tall. Alright, I'll turn it off, and then we'll discharge you. And that. Right. And then, there you go. Very good. Alright. Carol, can we stand your hair on end? No?
I'm a coward. I'm sorry, I'm a coward.
Now, it doesn't have to shock you to stand your hair on it. But I don't like anybody to get paranoid because if they just haven't felt a shock before and they pull their hand off, then all of a sudden it's going to arc to their hand.
Okay, Roger.
Okay.
Roger? Want to do it? Yeah.
Roger says,
I have a
hey!
hearing aid there, what'd you say?
Hey!
Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it.
All right.
I'll do it.
Want to do it easy or do you want to feel the shock first? Easy. Okay. Step up there. Everybody's afraid to touch me. I wonder why the people are afraid to take my hand. All right, there you go. Now we'll bring it up. And coming up. Oh, look at that. Shake your hair. There you go. That's the most excited I've seen you yet. So I have fun with this. All day long at Maker Faire, I'm surrounded by a virtual snowball of people that are trying to jockey to get up and get a jock. And never let it be said that Carol didn't give all for the... Now, reach out with your other hand and shock me. Well, that wasn't bad, was it? Wow. It's kind of fun. Now, everybody asks me, does it hurt? And I've got to be honest, no, it does not hurt. It shocks you. There's a big difference between a sting of a bee and a shock. Now, I won't come up on the other side of her and shock her butt, but on the other hand, she's at a high enough voltage. You want to get down? Oh, okay. She wants to get down, and we're going to make it easy and turn it off for her. And first of all, we discharge. There we go. Woo! All right.
Oh, thanks.
For my next trick, I shall electrocute a small child. Are there any people with small children that they don't want anymore? Okay, apparently not. He doesn't seem like he's going for it, so we won't go this time.
I wonder if I can borrow one of the neighbors.
We've got two other devices that are fun here.
You want to try?
One is a Tesla coil, and we'll go back to this one. This will be here, and during break, if anybody's decided they want to give it a try and they've worked on getting the courage up. This is a small Tesla coil. Let's see what turns it on. I think number 4.
Yeah, that is.
And this is a solid state Tesla coil. Basically, Tesla coils are really simple devices. They may look complex and they may do a lot of exciting things, but it's a transformer. And back at the day when Tesla first constructed them and started experimenting with high voltage and what in those days was high frequency electricity, maybe 170 kilohertz or so. Very high frequency. He was quite a feature of many magazines and many articles. Everybody wasn't quite sure about him, and he fed the rumors about his insanity and about him being a mad scientist. The Tesla coil was one of his creations that he used to study high voltage and study the transformation. This is pretty simple and straightforward. This is a solid state Tesla coil, which means that inside here is a voltage doubler, which then feeds an H-bridge, which is a glorified switch. Using solid state devices instead of a spark gap, it switches this primary coil, which is about, I think, 8 turns or so. And then we have about a 1200 turn secondary coil here. So obviously we get, first of all, the rise from the transformer. And second of all, because the circuit is resonant, we have resonant rise occurring. So we get a little higher voltage out of it. This one here, the nicest part about the new solid state coils is we can control them. In the old days, the ones that had simply a spark gap or a rotary gap were really tough to do anything exciting. These will accept an audio input, although I don't have one available for this one tonight. I didn't bring the right coil. I've got just spark coils tonight. This one here is designed to put out sparks, and it's got a couple of controls on it. It's got one that varies the pulse width, and one that varies the pulse frequency. Yes, sir?
Ron has a question.
Yeah, because we have a lot of people that just got their licenses and I don't know what their backgrounds are, could you point out, or I will, that your coil, the big coil, is made out of wire that has insulation on it so that the turns don't short out?
Indeed. What Ron is saying is absolutely true. This wire is what you find inside of transformers in most things, but it's magnet wire and it's enamel, and so it is insulated, and although it looks very pretty, it's actually a good thick coat of insulation, and then for good measure, we varnish the outside of it. And occasionally, when things get really tough on us and we're trying to do a show, we've been known to wrap saran wrap around the outside of one of these. Actually, Architect, the guys that you may have seen on America's Got Talent and Perform, had some issues with racing Sparx, which is what happens sometimes when we get out of tune. Just like with an antenna, if you have it tuned properly, the signal snaps off of it because it smells to the transmitter anyway electrically correct, even if you've got a tuner on it. Better yet if it's tuned properly. Likewise, if these are tuned properly, the charge ends at the toroid and it snaps off very well, and also generates a lot less interference and everything else. Sometimes it doesn't always work that well, and sometimes we need more insulation for some reasons or another. This is still experimental stuff. High voltage water, or voltage for that matter, electricity, water and people are all the same. We said they're all the same. Yes, they all take the path of least resistance. And so therefore with high voltage it's often an experiment because you don't know what the path of least resistance is all the time. You only think you do until it actually takes that path.
Is there a way we can tell these spark lights?
Yeah, I don't know which switches go where.
What's the power that you're actually putting into the primary of this unit?
Okay, the power I'm putting into the primary of this unit is probably about 600 or 700 watts. I'm putting in a primary of the wall voltage, which then goes through a voltage doubler that essentially takes it up to about 400 or so volts because I'm working with peak and not with the RMS value. Okay, so since we have some lights down here, let's turn this little puppy on. And then there's a push button here that does something. But not too much. But that's at the lowest width of the pulse. So as we increase the width of the pulse, we get more current through the transformer. And then we increase the frequency of the pulse. that this thing is able to light a fluorescent bulb. Ignition point for a fluorescent bulb is between 600 and 800 volts normally, somewhere around there. So that much voltage is essentially in the air that's being projected out by the electrons coming off this thing. Now, sometimes see, that's why it's in plastic. I've done this before in broken tubes, or had somebody get scared when I handed them the tube to hold up. But you can see where, by the way I move my hand here and where it gets dim. And I don't think I'm illuminating any of those up there. They're pretty well shielded. I always tell people, when you hold the tube, don't aim it at the coil. Sharp things tend to attract and tend to dispel electrons. That's why the electrons come off the end of that thing, because they're sharp and because they can focus easily there and jump off. That's simply a screw in the end of it. And this is simply a cheap theater prop. But I don't have any switches on it. It's a real fluorescent lamp. If anybody else would like to come up and hold a fluorescent lamp that will light up without any electricity, there's no shock on this. You might feel a little something, but not much. I'm not getting many takers. The kids are more adventurous than you guys, you know that? That's a problem. You guys have a little education, which can be a dangerous thing when it comes to not enjoying some things. Not only that, the pans tend to work with 12 volts a lot, 120 occasionally, and if they get into their box with 240, they get kind of paranoid.
You're standing awfully far away.
There you go. He's getting further. He can move. But you know, don't aim the ends of the coil. Get as close as you'd like to with him about. Output. Well, we're still able to light the light over there a pretty good distance away. Now I might point out that this was one of Tesla's favorite tricks, was to take an evacuated chamber of anything, and neon was one of his favorite toys also. And he essentially invented the fluorescent light, so he had a lot of these things around the lab. And he loved to do demonstrations of lighting things without any wires. He also designed and could have probably produced, although scaling it would have been a real problem, distribution of electricity using the ionosphere. Unfortunately, we decided to use lots of electricity, and it would have taken lots of antenna to receive enough current to be usable. So, in spite of what you hear about Tesla, he didn't come up with everything. He wasn't really insane and did things that the government has hidden for years and hasn't told us about. However, he did some pretty amazing things, as no doubt the world around us attests to. Also, there's a lot of places to go and learn about Tesla. I'll be putting some links up on my website, which is Sparx, spelled with an X.com, soon. And you can visit that website for pictures of, I got some cards too I'll distribute during break, if you can't remember Sparx.com. But anyway, that's... Not a bad trick, huh?
Yeah, I have a question. Now that device is creating a lot of harmonics up through the RF spectrum.
Not too far up into the RF spectrum. It's functioning. I was hoping that somebody would have a little scope or something tonight. I haven't looked at these with a scope in years, and so I've forgotten exactly what frequency they're functioning. This one I've never measured. It has a couple frequencies. The frequencies I set here of the pulses, and then when it actually is pulsing, there's a frequency of about, my guess would be maybe 125 kHz. I'm sorry, KHZ for you younger guys. Anyway, somewhere in that area. I think the one outside, if I remember right, is probably around 90 or so, 90,000 cycles, the resonance on it. But at any rate, the smaller one here, the smaller they are, the higher resonance point they have, the more likely they are to produce some interference. These are pretty clean. If they're tuned well, there's not too much radiation that's not being turned into light and ozone, as it were. And so these are pretty clean. And surprisingly enough, the Maker Faire, some of the guys that were exhibiting in the same hall as I was the ARRL. And so one of the first years they were in the same hall as I got a call from a very paranoid ham with the ARRL that said, hey, you know, we're going to be in the same hall as your Tesla coils, and can we even operate HF? And I said, yeah, probably shouldn't be a problem. You never really know, because you never know what you'll excite around you at what resonance. Every once in a while you get strange reactions, but we fired it all up, and you know, I made a little bit of hash on it when there was no other signal, but it was inconsequential in the noise level of the rest of the building. So there we go with the basics. Anything I can answer anybody that they have questions about?
When are we going to see the big one?
Hey, well, that's the next step, is we all have to go outside for that, so I'll go outside first after I turn this stuff off safely and make sure that it's still operational. At first, when I set it up tonight, it wasn't operational. My safety switch with a key on it had failed. And so we simply eliminated that safety switch, and now we have to be safe on our own. But it's out here. Let me see what I can do to make it work. All right, friends, this is my medium-sized coil. Medium? Yeah, I have one that stands about, I don't know, about 12 feet tall. And it puts out some pretty serious 12-foot or so arcs, too. But I didn't want to bring that one out here because 220 is hard to get, and it's also, we'll see what happens with the, I don't think I'll set off any alarm systems with what I'm doing here, but we'll see. Anyway, this guy here is got a 45,000 volt capacitor in it, a Maxwell capacitor that's 0.02 microfarad. And that basically is in series with the two neon sign transformers, which are there in the base of this thing. Those are both 15,000 volt at 60 mils. So I have 15,000 volts at 120 milliamps. And that goes through a spark gap and that capacitor and that primary coil. So they're all in series, and when the spark gap fires, it puts the juice from the capacitor into this primary coil, which then of course induces the voltage into the secondary coil. The secondary coil, the bottom end of it, is grounded through a ground stake that I drove here, and the top end goes up to these toroids that are then stacked with a Knight's helmet that I put on top because it's a good display, and people like to see that sort of thing. So when I step on this little foot switch here, you're going to see some good savage arcs come off this thing, hopefully. And then I'll take this nice ground stripe, and your very treasurer, if he survives the experience, will light up a fluorescent lamp. So here we go, and as I always say about this, just in case anybody's behind me and I don't see him, coming up. When I first arrived with this and Mike was helping me set up, he said, "You worried about the branches on the tree?" And I said, "No, I think I'll be able to get them." Now, I'm getting a little bit of a shock along this. There's a ground strap that comes off of here and goes right to the ground. But when you're dealing with these kind of voltages, the distance from there to here allows quite a bit of voltage to develop along the ground strap. So the next time that you're grounding your ham shack and you're thinking about that, think about the amount of RF that can develop along your ground strap and how you ought to just drill a hole in the floor right there and drive a ground route. Of course, that's probably not good for domestic tranquility, but anyway, one way or the other. A few more blasts of this thing here to make sure everybody got a good... Anybody questions? Anybody want to come here and hold this?
How many turns are on that coil?
That one there is closer to 1,000.
Uh-huh.
To be honest, I'm not sure. The guy that I got it from gave me specs on the thing, and I did not wind the secondary, however I constructed the rest of this.
Uh-huh.
They're a pain to do without a lathe, and I don't have a lathe. So,
When was the last time you had your sanity tested?
I think we're doing that now, aren't we?
Nice one.
Did anybody here verify that I'm a sane person? And that it's legal to give me a call sign and a gun, or a call sign? All right, coming up. One of the fun things that you can see as it gets darker is the small little bits of plasma that are coming off this thing. Pretty much anywhere that's even slightly sharp, electrons are in a hurry. There's lots of them, and they're trying to get out of there as quick as they can. They're using every exit they can find. And the ones that are their favorites are sharp objects. I use the helmet on the top to direct the sparks up. I'm getting sparks off this thing sometimes that would be longer than the distance to the primary. The problem is that if I take an arc from this to the primary, all the transformers and insulation in the primary are only insulated up to a measly 15 or 20,000 volts. And so the 250,000 or so that's coming off the top of this thing would be a bit much for the insulation, especially inside the neon sign transformers. There's two things to prevent it getting back to them. We not only have a spark gap here, which is actually 4 pieces of copper pipe that the end two are connected up to the capacitor and to the primary coil, but the 2 middle ones are just floating. And they've got about a 1/4 inch between them, so there's 3/4 inch spark gaps on this thing that are extinguished, not cooled, but extinguished by a blower. Once a spark gap fires, the air that it fires through becomes plasma and is a conductor. So it will keep conducting because now it's got a lot lower threshold. But if we blow that plasma away, then it's got to do it again. So that's what causes the spark gap to fire, and hence causes us to get a pulsating current into the primary and through the secondary. So enough theory, let's have another drill. See a wind coming off of this, a purple wind, and that's simply plasma, because not only is there the main arcs that you're seeing, but there's just an incredible flow of plasma and electrons off of this object and between the ground and this object. So if you look real close, you'll probably see a little bit of purple wind, it looks almost like. We always have a chance to see plenty of what electricity does. It makes lots of light, it makes our radios work, it moves things, but we seldom get to actually see or feel electricity. And that's where I come in. If there's anything that I find thrilling, it's seeing and feeling electricity. And I find that most kids, they're used to all of the rest of this crap. I'm an old guy. And so, you know, I grew up, and as I saw these things happen, I said, wow, that's pretty amazing. But the kids grew up with it all. When I actually have a chance to show kids what electricity looks like in its raw form and let them feel a shock, I see a twinkle in their eye. And that's why I'm crazy. That's why I'm insane and I do this sort of thing, is because if I get a twinkle in their eye, that means they're thrilled. If they're thrilled, that means they're interested. If I can get them half interested, then they can understand enough to be really thrilled. Because once you understand this crap, if you guys are anything like me, it just tickles me to death what it actually can do. And this is just one way of kind of sucking them in. And with kids, I really want to bring them around so that they understand the physical world around them, because it is still a jungle, and we may have a lot of government and other people to make life easy for us, but ultimately, the more we understand about the jungle we live in, the better we can provide for ourselves, those we love, and most of all, we can stay safe around electricity or around people that aren't safe. One more time. Notice just before this thing breaks into a full-blown arc that you can see little sparks coming off it and the kind of flow of plasma. Anybody want to come up and play with this or with a fluorescent lamp?
Good.
Go ahead.
Say a little bit about it, not too much.
Yeah, sure, let's see that.
You don't
Not very good when I get off work.
you don't want to get it too close there, because if you do, it gets to be a little bit heavy current for the system. All right, coming up.
Someone else want to try?
See it light up.
All right,
Don't touch the tip.
we all clear? Coming up. Neon sign transformers never thought they'd see that kind of service. Those guys are going, what? Anybody else want to give this a try?
Yeah, I'll try it.
All right.
Ready for me?
I don't know if I am or not. Can you see anything at all?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can understand when you're about to hit it.
Well, you have to show me where to point or guide my hand.
Right? Grab that, and probably the best way is to keep that above it. That's really where it comes off the bed. Come in a little closer.
See where I'm going.
Sure. You want to be, actually, this thing bends like crazy, so let me give you a shot here and see what happens. All right, coming up. Well,
I just got a couple of
Yeah, I'll try.
we need to find out how to work this. What
well,
do we look for?
find Tesla coils. There's a list actually on the internet. It's called the pupman.com. Anyway, yeah, if anybody wants to learn anything about Tesla coils, very interesting list. See me first of all. That's the easiest way. But on the web is a list, mailing list at pupman.com. Just like it sounds, pupman.com. The guy called his little son Pupman, and so that's the name he chose for his website. Anyway, that's a mailing list from all the Tesla coil builders across the world. And it's got people there from a garage tinkerer that never knew how to say Tesla to guys that work at Lawrence Livermore and are doing experiments in the cutting edge of high voltage physics. So, want to give that a try? The idea is to not get closer than about a foot. About a foot begins to load down the pink current, so we don't want to do that. Go back as far as you'd like, and then coming up. Falling over. Not bad, huh? John, how much is your electricity bill? Oh,
Feel the energy.
It's a lot different animals. They do the same
Do you want to do it? This one.
Probably no more than 2 years. It's a hot tub that really runs the electricity. I can't just compete with a hot tub with this. All right, anybody else got any questions or want to try any experiments? Want to reach out and touch somebody?
I mean, I have an electric drill that makes it work.
I'll gladly hit this again. As a matter of fact, you have trouble keeping me from hitting it. I
30.
kind of enjoy it.
Well, that's true. Yeah. It just sparks.
Is it going, Carol? Yeah, just go ahead.
Oh, okay. I see.
It's sweet.
Like I said,
Yeah. Which is probably different.
I'm sorry, I can't help myself. This is way too much fun.
We kind of would cry if we didn't
Way
have
more fun than people should be allowed to have. Any questions? Any more fun? Or you just want me to do it again?
have time to do the other thing?
Yeah, I think we'll take our break now. Thank you very much.
Okay, during the break, I'll go in and fire up the Graaff, and if anybody wants a little
We'll do yours right
from
after
that, I'll be pleased to